Hey there, it's the real Jason Duncan. I've got a special announcement for you really quick. I am hosting the Exit Lifestyle Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, February 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2022. You don't want to miss it. Go to theexitlifestyle.com to learn more.
When you're giving back to people's life and you can make a life while doing that, I think that's success.
I want you to say that again. The very first thing you said was something about, you said it's about moving others. What did you say? That was really clever. I like that.
Yeah, to me, it's about being able to do something that you're so passionate about that when it moves you, it helps you move others.
Okay, that's very good. That's deep too, man. That's really good.
I try to be something different than a golf teacher. Like when people come get a golf lesson from me, I don't want them to feel like they got a golf lesson. I want them to feel like it was a different experience than they ever expected. And that matters to me. So I try to come at life holistically, because at the end of the day, what we all struggle with in golf, business, are the same things that we struggle with in our marriage and the same things we struggle with in our life. And it's learning how to handle the difficult times with the right processes and systems.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
Welcome back to another episode of The Root of All Success with me, the real Jason Duncan. I've got a great guest for you today. We're going to talk golf. So golf and success seem to kind of go together. A lot of successful people spend their free time playing golf. And our guest, Virgil today, is going to talk a little bit about his experience with golf. He knows golf just a little. We're going to talk about that. But thank you for listening today. No matter where you are listening to this, in your car, on a walk, cleaning the house, whatever it is you're doing, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for you taking the time to tune in to this show. I started recording this show in December of 2020 and started releasing shows in 21, and it's really one of the joys of my life. I enjoy getting to sit across the table from very successful people, like we're going to talk with Virgil today about how they became successful. And that's really what this show is about. I've got this theory that there are these 5 things that show up in every successful person's story, no matter if they're in the golf world, real estate world, they're and selling widgets, whatever they're doing, these 5 things happen. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about with our guests today. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And if you are able to subscribe and leave a 5-star review, that would mean a lot to me. Thank you for doing that, because the more 5-star reviews we get as a podcast, the more people get to see it, because it goes further up in the rankings. And this is one of the fastest growing podcasts in the entrepreneurial kind of genre. So thank you for helping me get there. And if you haven't watched this on YouTube, you should go check it out at The Real Jason Duncan on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/TheRealJasonDuncan. I've got a playlist there just for the podcast. And you can see that we're here in the Rhino Room at the Standard at the Smith House here in Nashville, Tennessee. Owned and operated by the one and only Joshua Sterling Smith. This place is 18,000 square feet of Southern sophistication and style. It's a private club for members, cigar, whiskey, all kinds of cool stuff. And then there's a public restaurant downstairs, which is one of the #1 steak restaurants in the state. And you really, anytime you come to Nashville, you got to come check out the Standard. It's a great place. And since you're a listener to the show, if you'll send me a message and say, hey, I'm coming to Nashville, let's meet up, I heard your show, I'd be happy to arrange it if it's possible for us to get together and have a drink here at the Standard. So today, my guest and I are having a little Guidance Whiskey, which is a Nashville brand, and also Jason Virgil is the proprietor of the brand. He's a member here at the club and has been on my show before. So if you want to go back in the archives look that up. You can hear about Jason's story. But we're not talking about Jason today, even though we're drinking his whiskey today. Virgil and I are talking about other things besides whiskey. So I want to introduce to you our guest, and he's got some really interesting background in the golf world. And I don't normally read the introductions because but he's got so many cool little pieces of it. I think I'm going to have to do more reading than I normally do. But he is the director of golf at Ensworth High School, which is a private school right here in the Nashville area, one of the top private schools in the area. He won the TN Section PGA Teacher of the Year both in 2003 and 15, and has won the Middle Tennessee Chapter Teacher of the Year 6 times. And you guys know from listening to my show, I was a former school teacher as well, so I think that's very cool that he's that. He's one of the charter members of the Golf. He's one of the charter members of the Golf Channel Academy, and also acts as the golf analyst for CBS Newschannel 5 here in Nashville, Tennessee. He's a 3-time best-selling author. His books are Elevated, The Golf Journal, and Excavated. And actually, we're giving away a copy of his book, Elevated, for listeners to this episode. And it's actually signed by Virgil and Drew Maddux, who helped write this book with him. So if you want this copy that I'm holding in my hand, you can see it on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. The first person to DM me through Instagram at @TheRealJasonDuncan that says, "Hey, I listened to the show and I want the book." The first person to do that, I will give you this signed copy of the book Elevated by Virgil Herring and Drew Maddux. It's an autographed copy. After graduating from Mississippi State in 1997, Virgil moved to Nashville, started teaching at a junior golf mecca called Through the Green in Franklin, Tennessee. And he spent 5 years at the Hermitage Golf Course and another 5 at the Gaylord Opryland Resort, and then moved to Westhaven Golf Club here in the Nashville area before taking his position at Ensworth High School. And since '97, he's helped 198 junior golfers earn golf scholarships, which is pretty phenomenal. He's taught 2 PGA Tour winners, 2 Korn Ferry Tour winners, 3 players to become #1 in the NCAA, and was TSSAA Golf Coach of the Year just a couple of years ago in 2019. Always looking for entrepreneurial experiences, Virgil has a radio show on the #1 sports radio station per capita in the country, which is right here in Nashville, 104.5 The Zone. And for 17 years, he did that before heading into the podcast business. And with his knowledge of wine, he has used that as a public speaking platform to relate his traits of the wines, winemakers, and chateaus to golf and to business and to entertainment. So this is going to be a really interesting story, a little bit out of the norm, actually, from some of the people that I talked to on the show, and which makes this all the more interesting for me as the host. But I want you to help me welcome Virgil Herring to the show. Virgil?
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to being on your show, your podcast, On the Verge, which I think is a pretty cool title, play on your name there, but on your show later. So tell me let's talk about your podcast before we get too deep into it, because I want to help you promote that. So what's On the Verge all about?
Well, On the Verge is a deep dive into the person. And I'm much like you, I'm very fascinated with what makes people successful. I call it I want to know your processes and your systems, because it's the processes and systems that you employ that allow you to get to the place that you are. And in all actuality, I do it to help promote others, but I also do it selfishly because it helps me become a better person each and every time I interview somebody. So that's the gift that keeps on giving for me. Every person I get a chance to help is helping me simultaneously.
Isn't podcasting such a cool thing? Because you get to meet some great people like you, and you get to learn stuff and make connections, and your network expands. I don't know what number we're on, but I think we're in the 40th something episode, and I've met amazing people like you. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it's an honor.
And people go check out On the Verge. You can find that at any podcast player. Right?
All the normal spots, iTunes, all the way to Spotify. It's all there.
And it's On the Verge, VIRG.
That's right.
Like your name, Virgil.
My name. That's right.
Virgil's an interesting name. Is that a family name?
No, to me, but it came down to either Waylon Jennings. It's my dad's favorite country music star. My mom vetoed that, so it quickly went to Virgil.
Well, there's not a lot of people I know named Virgil. It's not a weird name. It's just interesting. It's so I don't meet a lot of Virgils. So I think you've played on that name well On the Verge.
My dad wanted me to be able to be recognized by just my first name, which is interesting, and I thought that was a compelling feel like, when you think of the greatest of something, not that I am the greatest of anything, my dad was a believer of, they only had to be said Gandhi, it only had to be said Tiger, so you only think of one word and it says everything. So I thought, well, at first I didn't like it because Virgil kind of got picked on when I was a kid, but as I've gotten to be older, it's all right. It's been all right.
What, do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister who is 3 years younger than I am. She was in the Marine Corps, served our country for 7 years, and then she got out, honorably discharged for back injuries, and now she helps soldiers who get out find jobs in the real world.
Oh, that's great.
And then my brother is 10 years younger than I am, and he's back in my hometown in Pennsylvania as a a grocery store manager, hanging and make sure my mom and dad are doing well every day too.
So do they have interesting names as well?
My
Bob
sister's
and Mary.
my brother's name is Rocky, and my sister's name is Valerie. So my sister got the middle of the vanilla name.
Still not a bad name though.
Nope.
Valerie and Virgil and Rocky.
Yep, that's
So
right.
Rocky's like his real name, like not a nickname?
That's his middle name. He has my dad's first name, Dave.
Oh, okay. Very good. Well, so why golf? Like, when did you first get involved in golf?
Well, my life was basically pitching until I tore my rotator cuff. And when I tore my rotator cuff the first time, I couldn't play baseball that year. So I get home from the doctor and I see my buddies whacking a plastic golf ball around his backyard from like one wash line pole to a tree stump. And I'm asking, what are you doing? He goes, I'm playing the Masters. Like, I have no idea what any of that is.
How old were you in this happened?
14.
Oh, okay.
So we started playing, and I've kind of liked it. But it was interesting because I'm left-handed, but he's right-handed, and I didn't know that, I didn't know if there was a left-handed golf because my dad said, golf is like field hockey. There is no left-handers. You have to play right-handed. So I played right-handed for 9 months, and when my dad's dad passed away, maybe 2 weeks after that, we went out to clean the garage out, and what did we find? A left-handed set of golf clubs that my dad didn't even know his father played golf.
Really?
And I started playing golf left-handed instantly, and I took off from there.
Well, that is so the first 9 months right-handed.
Yeah.
Then left-handed, and of course you're still playing left-handed.
That's right. That's how I got there. And then I thought I was going to be able to recuperate my arm, and I pitched 7 games after that and tore it again, and it was over.
Oh.
But it was but it's in weird. Golf gives me this place where if I play well and I do well, I reap the rewards, and if I don't, I don't. But in team sports, which is really complicated sometimes, when you play a great game, but your team doesn't win, I had a hard time feeling bad about the performance. And I also had a hard time being celebratory if I didn't do my part to help the team win. So I would be, individual sports are more wired for me than team sports were because I'm so driven to be the best that I can be that when I did great and we didn't win, I wasn't that hurt, and vice versa. So I've picked a good sport for me.
Yeah, so golf, I think of a couple other. Tennis is probably another one it's an individual effort, individual game. But a lot of the sports, like I played baseball and soccer growing up, and those are obviously very, very team. Like one person could screw up and mess up the whole thing for everybody. But you, and as a pitcher, a lot of the game revolved around you as the individual.
That's right.
In baseball, so.
And it's interesting, as soon as my pitching went away, first base didn't matter to me that much, and hitting didn't matter to me that much. I'm wired for having the ball in my hand, so to speak.
All right. So did you play golf through high school?
I did. I played golf through high school, and I went to Mississippi State University in the professional golf management program. And when you go into that, you become a professional because you're coaching golf or whatever. And as soon as you take money give a golf lesson, you're now considered a professional. So I did not play at Mississippi State University, but I coached a lot of them.
Really?
Yeah.
So how much do you play now? Are you pretty active, or are you still just doing
I do play a lot, and I have 2 sons that love to play golf with Dad, and that's probably my highlight is, get off of work and have them watching, waiting for me on the first tee, can't wait. But I probably play more than most PGA pros because I believe that as a coach, I can't see what it is that's really going on unless I'm watching you play in the actual field of play. Because almost always when you come get a golf lesson for me, it's in an environment that's very safe. You got video cameras that are going to tell you everything. The lie's perfectly flat, sitting there perfectly. So you don't have the vagaries of the lie, the wind, there's a downhill, uphill, all of those things. So I get a chance to really see what's going on when I play. So I like to get almost all of my clients on the golf course at least once, which gets me 100 rounds of golf in a year.
Wow. So have you ever hit a hole-in-one?
I have 4.
4. What was the first one like?
The first one was weird because it was in my high school, my club championship 2 days before I went to Mississippi State. It was a really foggy day on the hardest par 3 on the club, and I hit a 7-iron. Literally have no idea where it went. And I get up there, we're looking around, and there's a ball mark right in front of the hole. But I don't think that it possibly could be me. So I'm kind of walking around like, are you playing a Hogan 392 LS? And I'm like, yes. He goes, hole in one. So I didn't even see it.
Oh, wow.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you hit it, fog prevents you from seeing where the ball goes and find out. So did you get your picture like at the club and all this stuff? What do they do with the hole in one?
I got a nice plaque sent to me in the mail maybe 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I've never hit a hole in one. Putt, I've done that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like sometimes you feel like you got a better chance of getting struck by lightning than making a hole in one. The odds are insane. So, I mean, there are great players that play on TV that have never even had one, which is hard to believe.
Yeah. So the other 3 that you hit, what were those like?
One was during a playing lesson. That was my second one. And I'm like, here's what you want to do. It's about 150 yards. Going to play it here. I'm gonna try to take it off the slope and run it down to the hole. And I'm like, I'd hit it, and it did exactly that. So I'm actually talking to him about like how I wanted him to finish. And he jumps up and I went in the hole, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So in the middle of trying to say exactly what to do, I did that.
You're like, do this.
Do this.
And then he doesn't do it like, hey, man, you gotta listen, I'm better than you.
Didn't I just tell you? So that's been fun. I switched one at Gaylord, where it flew straight into the hole on, I guess it's 14 now. And then I had one with my sons at Percy Warner not long ago. And I was stiff as a board and just didn't even hit that good of a shot, and doink, 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 went right in the hole. So
I think that as golf has progressed over the ages with the clubs and all that kind of stuff, the courses are getting a little bit more difficult to play, I guess, because if they didn't, I mean, you'd see a lot more holes in one, or you would see a lot more, one putt, you're done, right?
Well, I think that there's this weird balance between keeping the game fun enough and easy enough that makes people want to play, but also have golf courses challenging enough to get the best players interested. The game is not very easy, as you well know. So when you go out and you play a golf course way above your pay grade, so to speak, in difficulty, it can make you feel kind of helpless. So I believe that there should be like 50% of the golf courses should be made so that you can play very easy, fun, and quick round of golf. And then we have a couple of them in town. My favorite one's McCabe, which is right in the middle of downtown. It's short. It makes you feel good. You shoot way lower than your expected score all the time. And what does that make you want to do? It keeps you coming back. But as you progress, you want different challenges. And then we have plenty of great golf courses in Nashville and the surrounding areas to challenge your game. And that balance between getting your confidence up and having it checked for reality, those are really important pieces in the psyche.
When I was a kid, we were talking this pre-show, when I was a kid, my grandfather, they lived in East Nashville, and I lived with them for a while. My parents and we all kind of all lived in the same house with my grandparents for several years when I was a kid over in East Nashville, and my grandfather played every Monday. And if we lived there, or if I stayed with them during the summer, I would go play with him, and he would let me play with, and he got me lessons, and we played a lot at Shelby Park. And I remember that quite a bit, playing over at Shelby Park. And I drove through there. I hadn't driven past that golf course in so long. My wife and I were out riding the motorcycle. I don't know, it's been a few months ago. It was back earlier in the spring, I think. And we rode through there, and it just, all these memories come flooding back of playing with my grandfather. Because there's one spot over there where there's nets, because it's really close to the houses, and there's nets. And I just remember all that from being a kid. And then when he passed away, I guess I was 12 or 13. He gave me, or he didn't, the family, I ended up getting his golf clubs, and they were wooden, like wooden heads and all that kind of stuff, wooden shafts. And it was, I still got those, and it was, but I only play now maybe once a year in a chamber tournament. But it is always fun. But my joke with everybody about golf is that it's too long. It should be 14 holes, not 18, because I can tell if I'm playing a scramble and you start on different holes, you don't ever, and if you're not keeping score, you don't even really know where you are. You're just like, okay, how many more we got? Well, I remember telling all the foursome that we were playing with, that the last one I played, I told my joke about it should be 14 holes, not 18. And we got to a hole. I didn't know where we were in terms of how far we are in the 18. I said, man, I'm getting tired. I'm ready to go back to the clubhouse. Where are we? And this is the 14th. I said, see? So why is golf 18 holes? Why is there a reason for that?
My understanding, although I think it's lore, is the fact that there are 18 shots of whiskey in a bottle of scotch.
See, that's what I'd heard, but I didn't know if that was true or not.
I'm not so sure that that's accurate either, but it sure sounds right.
Yeah, well, cheers.
Cheers to that.
I don't do a lot of drinking of whiskey when I'm playing golf, although that might make me make me enjoy it a little. I could go 4 more holes.
You just have to have a nice regulation.
But can you imagine 18? So if you did 18 shots, well, you wouldn't do 18. There's no way you wouldn't be able to stand up. But so if there's 4 of them playing 18, that's not even. I don't know. Anyway.
That's 72 shots, man.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So so now you're a teacher. You've won Teacher of the Year several times, and a lot of. What subjects are you teaching? Is it just golf, or is it physical education? What is it that you teach?
It's mainly golf and the golf swing is what I'm noted for. So when the PGA recognizes that, it's just a person who impacts the state of Tennessee most by their teaching, whether it be because I coached somebody that won big golf tournaments, or I helped X amount of kids get a golf scholarship, or I wrote a book, or I did some volunteer work that raised money to help, tornado relief or something like that. You do something that within the realm of coaching the game helps either kids get, further their education, or you help others in need, or you provide some type of impact in the PGA community that makes a big difference.
So talk about your book. I've got this book, Elevated, by you, Virgil Herring, and then Drew Maddux, which people probably know that name. But how did this book come about, and what is it about?
So this is a really fun story. So 3 Christmases ago, I'm invited to a Christmas party, and I'm showing up late. And I almost didn't even show up because I hate being late. But I did show up, and there was only 1 seat left, and it was beside this real tall guy. So I sit down, and hey, Drew Maddux? And I'm like, you mean like 3-point shooting Drew Maddux? He goes, that's me. He goes, I booed you off the court in 1995 when I went to Mississippi State. He laughed. And I didn't speak to anybody else the whole night. We're like brothers from another mother. And we got talking about coaching, and he asked me a question about writing a book. And I'm like, you should write a book, man. You got all this great content. He goes, I don't know how to write a book. He goes, well, I'll write one with you. He goes, why would you want to do that? I wrote one by myself the first time. It wasn't all that exciting. It's got to be better to do it with another person. So we picked 50 words that are elevating, make you feel better, to help people lift up. And certainly in the world that we live in today, one, we're lacking communication. The language that we speak is not being used appropriately. So we picked 50 words to elevate people. And we told stories based around what the word meant to us, either as the athlete, as a coach, or a spectator. And we tell stories that are elevating to, it's a quick read. It's like read a word a day and you'll feel better when you're done. And one of the things that I like about my books is that I turn my book into your book. So there's a word that I write on, a word that Drew writes on, and then on the opposite side, it's a place for you to write what the word means to you so that my book becomes yours.
That's great, man. So Drew was a basketball guy, not a golf guy, right?
That's right. He was a All-American basketball player at Vanderbilt and won multiple state championships at Christ Press CPA here in town. And he just left a CPA to now take on a really good position at Ashley Furniture. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, I have. I think he's a member here at the club. I'm not sure. I think he's been here before. I've seen him a couple of times around the club. Maybe he's a member, maybe he's not. But I think I've seen him around. But yeah, so you hook up. You're a golf guy. Hook up with a basketball guy, and you guys write a book to elevate people. And I think that's a cool thing. So there's words here like transitioning, accountability, grateful, engaging, enthusiasm, confidence. And so again, I'll remind the listeners that if you want this signed copy, the first person to DM me through my Instagram account at @TheRealJasonDuncan that says, hey, I heard the show with Virgil Herring, I want the book. First person to do that, I'll send them the book. And everybody else who asks, I'll say, you need to go buy it from Virgil.
That's right, go to Amazon.
Go to Amazon. So is this your third?
That's the second.
That's the second book.
My third one just came out. It's called Excavated, which is obviously a deeper dig to help pull people out, obviously coming out of the pandemic, and the difficulties of where mental health and wellness is in this country, basically based off of the pandemic and the difficulties that we're facing through social media that's really starting to wear people down. And they're much bigger. It's a darker book, so to speak, but you have to dig deeper when you're hurting to pull yourself back up, and that's all we try to do in those 50 words.
Who did you write that alone?
I wrote that with Drew Maddux as well.
So Drew's in there as well. So your first book was you, second book and third book are with Drew.
That's right.
So you guys hang out a lot.
Yes, we did, and it's really fun. We did a word a day. We wrote the book in 50 days, and then we sent it to the publisher and cranked it out in about 30 days after that. We're ready to go.
You make it sound so easy, Virgil.
Well, I think, I'm really influenced a lot by Tony Robbins, and I love his mentality of, if you don't know how to do something, but you get a great opportunity, say yes and figure it out. So that's all I did. I said yes and I'll figure it out.
I've had a book in me for a long time, and I've written 2 ebooks, and I want to get it to a published, full book, but it's just so many other competing objectives and priorities in life. But it's coming. It's coming.
Well, you think it's interesting though. You got this podcast, right? You got all these listeners and viewers that they're right there, and they're interacting with you, even though they're not actually talking with you. When you make a book, you're forcing people to actually sit down and read. So it's easier to get people interested in your story through the podcast. And when your book is ready, you'll have the right amount of people that are ready to read it. And I think you're doing the right thing. You're doing it in the right way too.
Yeah, well, I've got the first book, the first ebook I wrote was called Why People Buy. It's uncovering the 4 reasons why anybody buys anything. And it's available on my website right now as an ebook, download for free. You can go to the website, therealjasonduncan.com, and it's right there. And the other one is really what this podcast is about. It's called The 5 Keys to Success, the 5 indisputable keys that every successful person uses to unlock success. And I'm in the final throes of the editor getting that ebook ready. It'll be out. By the time this airs, it'll probably be ready. But
fantastic.
I want to take that to full published book, because it's like, I don't know how many words are in your book, but I think it was like 15,000 words, and that was before I added the interviews. And because my idea with my book was to take these interviews that I'm doing on the show and have them transcribed and include excerpts from those interviews as a subsidiary, not a subsidiary, but as a way to support the concepts of the 5 P's of success with the stories I talk to people about on the show. So
that's a brilliant idea.
We'll see. It's coming. Maybe one day, maybe 22. So let me ask you about teaching. So you're at Ensworth, which is a very prestigious private school here in town, and you're teaching golf there. But you're not just teaching. You're doing a podcast. You've been on the radio. You're on television. So kind of go back to the genesis of your media. Like, what was the first thing you did with media?
Well, the first thing I did with media, at one point, News Channel 4 came to me, and former CNN sportscaster Steve Wrigley came out to see me in 2001 to do golf lessons for News Channel 4. So that was my first foray into like a 2-minute golf lesson with somebody and help them on the driving range. And that was called Why Do I Do That? It was pretty well done by Wrigley. From there, 2 years later, Jack Crawl, who owned Jack's Golf Shop in Belmead, got a radio show, and he says, "Hey man, would you want to come on my show like once a month to give a golf lesson?" So I did the first show. And he said, "Well, do you think you could have one ready in like in a month?" Like, "Jack, I got like 4,000 golf. I could do one every day for the next 5 years." He goes, "Well, then come in next week." And I did it literally with him for 5 years. And then when the economic downturn squished it for like 9 months, and then 104.5 brought me back by myself. And then I did it all the way up until the pandemic, when the pandemic kind of squished a lot of radio for sure.
Yeah. So you were doing that on 104.5 The Zone. And what was that show about?
It was called Talking Golf with Virgil, and I did one segment on the mental, one segment on the physical, one on management, and then I'd surprise you with either a celebrity or a golf personality and do a little quick interview about the person. So it was a real quick, and then I'd always predict who I thought was going to win the tournament, because I always did it on Sunday morning. So then I'd be predicting who was going to win that afternoon. That turned into a popular part too.
Were you good at predicting?
For a while I was on a mad tear for a long time, but then I started to get a little cold when Tiger Woods no longer was playing as well as he used to. Tiger made it easy.
Yeah, who's going to win, Tiger? Who's going to win, Tiger?
Yeah, that's right.
So what else did you do in the media? So you're on 104.5 The Zone for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And you did Channel 5, News Channel 5 stuff too, right?
Yes, I've done News Channel 5 now for 10 years. And my big break, had a couple of big breaks. Obviously, when you teach Brandt Snedeker, and Brandt Snedeker wins on the PGA Tour and becomes Rookie of the Year, on top of playing in the Masters as an amateur, that's gonna, as a golf teacher, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially a hometown kid like Brandt. That was a big deal. But I got a chance to speak for a teachers group for the PGA during the Ryder Cup in 2012 at Medina. And I prepared for that moment like it might be my only chance I'll ever get to speak to that many people worldwide and deliver a message. And what was basically the title was, How Do You Dominate Your Market? So I put everything I had into it and I crushed it, and it opened up the door for me to become a Golf Channel instructor. And that was a massive break for me. And I outside of Michael Breed and Martin Hall, I had the largest library until, COVID basically stopped the Golf Channel from being in Orlando. It's now at NBC Studios in Connecticut. So there's no more Golf Channel Academy because it's not in Orlando anymore. And so at the end of the day, a lot of the COVID has hurt a lot of people. So I get that. And it got me media-wise, but it just allowed me to, it was like a stopgap. Like stop one thing, but it just made me start doing something different.
And is that when you started the podcasting?
So that was one of the keys. Is like between the radio show and the Golf Channel piece kind of looking like it was falling apart. I wanted to do something that was more deep dive and more of a immersive questioning of people. Because when I do 15-minute interviews on my golf show, that was like obvious quick questions, right? But when I get a chance to sit down with somebody, and I don't have a limit on mine, I've had a couple that have gone over 2 hours. Like I did one with Eddie George, and it was so good, and I had never met him before. He couldn't have been any more giving. I just kept going and going. He kept giving awesome answers. I'm like, we're at 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I just like to let it roll. It's
and that's on the Verge.
That's on the Verge, right?
But do you have another? You have another one too,
I have
right?
another one. It's Elevated. Now, right now, it's getting transitioned because Drew and I have now been picked up by Cumulus Media. So our podcast will be available on Cumulus Media very soon.
Oh, that's really good. That's awesome, man.
So that'll transition into our second book. So we're just basically doing a deeper dive into each word off of the book. So you get the book, but then you listen to the podcast and we go deeper and tell different stories and go more in depth.
And you're doing that with Drew.
I'm doing that with Drew.
You guys are co-hosting that together.
That's right. So
where do you record that one?
Well, I have my own studio at the Ensworth Golf Center.
Okay.
So we'll do it there, and then I just download it to Cumulus.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, does Cumulus own 104.5?
That's right.
Yeah, I thought that's probably.
So Drew does a lot of the basketball commentary for them, and I do the golf. So even though I don't do the radio show anymore, every time we get a major championship, I'll do some talking either Thursday or Friday, and then usually that Monday after talk about what actually happened.
As a very successful golf teacher who's helped people win tours, what is the hardest part of golf for somebody playing golf? As a teacher, what would you say that is?
Well, it comes in levels, right? So at the beginning of the game is just figuring out how to make a golf swing that doesn't feel like anything like it looks. So the feel and learning how to make good contact so that you feel like you're playing the game is the first hard part. And then as soon as you hit the golf ball, what I'd say, well enough to enjoy it, doesn't mean you're hitting it like Tiger Woods, but your drives are going up into the air and are relatively straight, and your second shots are getting up there close to the green, and you have a chance to make pars. Then it starts to become more mental. But the real challenging piece and the fun part for me is that I teach the people who are trying to become as great as they can be. And a lot of that has less to do with your physical gifts and more about your ability to allow yourself to access the talents that you've stored inside your body with muscle memory or myelin. So that's where my joy comes from, is I'm more into the brain and how the brain works that allows you to have access to all of your stored talent. And a lot of people don't understand how that works.
So if that's the most challenging part, what's the one coolest mental trick that you've helped golfers kind of use to become more successful?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Stephen Yellen, who's a good friend of mine, and I think he's the greatest coach in the world when it comes to helping people understand what actually happens between your muscles and the brain. But the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, it likes to control things, and it likes to keep you safe or prevent you from being scared or making embarrassing yourself. So right. Golf has the ability, every single shot, for you to hit a bad one enough to embarrass you. So your prefrontal cortex likes to get a little too involved. But when you're asking yourself, I'm going to hit a driver and I'm going to start it at that tree and hit a little draw, if you can do that and not let your prefrontal cortex interfere with the messaging from the brain to the muscles, it goes at like 2 billion bits per second. But if the prefrontal cortex gets involved, like for me to do that, I got to put the club in this position, I got to make this move, you try to be too perfect, it slows it down to like 500.
Huh.
So it's like a turtle going across the street and the superhighway going that way. So I try to get people to interfere their prefrontal cortex, and one of them is to count. Because if you're counting, and Stephen is big in 7, 8, 9, and you do it in a nice cadence, when you give your brain a task, the prefrontal cortex is paying attention to the numbers, and it doesn't allow itself to interfere with what you already know that you're trying to do, which is to hit the whatever shot you're trying to hit.
So they're actually counting out loud or to themselves while they're swinging.
That's right. And when you get really good at it, you do it at such a rhythm, like when you're like 7, 8, 9 is like 7, 8, 9, and you build in your own rhythm to your golf swing, which is kind of like backdoor, coming in under the hood, sneaky stuff that gets people right where they need to be when they're playing.
What makes some golfers more successful than others? And they're all good. I mean, you're on the tour for a reason. But why are some more successful than others?
Well, I think there's two things. Obviously, the people who are the fastest, the people who can swing the fastest, because the number one indicator of talent in every sport is speed, right? So the people who swing the fastest hit it the farthest, who happen to most of the time hit it the straightest. So talent is speed, right? But now, let's say there's 20 guys that all have the same speed and all have the same physical gifts, and there's plenty of those out there on the tour, is those who can control their emotions so that they're able to think clearly through their management processes to choose the correct targets and hit the correct shot at the right time. The ability to be able to control the heart rate and the breathing and the mind while doing that is an intangible gift that I think separated Tiger and Jack Nicklaus from everybody, and that's why they're widely considered 1A and 1B, and pick your poison who you put A or B. Those two have stood out, and they had the massive mental control over everything else.
I remember seeing, it was a YouTube video of Jack Nicklaus. I don't remember where, you're a golfer, you probably remember where this happened, but they were doing some sort of pro-am or scramble or something, but there was a crowd, it was on television, and there was a super long putt the other guy was trying to make, and Jack was saying, well, just do this, and the guy said, well, you think you could do it? And he stepped up there and hit like a 50-foot putt and sunk it, and just walked away like, this is what you're supposed to do. That probably is the best illustration of that mental control.
No doubt about it. So that was Johnny Miller, one of Jack Nicklaus's ultimate rivals in his prime. I think it was a golf course opening that Jack Nicklaus designed, and it was the grand opening. So Johnny Miller came out there, and they were talking. It was over 100 feet.
Oh, it was much longer than I thought.
Yeah, so it was sitting back there, and he just walked over here and give me your putter, and goes over and up the hill, breaks about 22 different ways, and dunks, and Jack's like, yeah, told you.
It's like you teaching the guy, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to swing it, it's going to land here, and then you do it, and it rolls in, hole in one.
Way less prestigious, but it's similar.
Well, success is what this show is really about, and so you've achieved a significant amount of success in the golf world as a teacher. You know, you're teaching the people to go out and win these tournaments and get scholarships, and you've made a big impact on junior golfers. What do you think the word success means? Like in your mind, what does that word just generally mean?
When I think of success, I think of you have found a passion that moves you, that helps you move others. Because I don't think success is money. I don't think success is fame if you don't have the passion, because then it's hollow. And usually people who chase the money or chase the fame have a hard time coping with the fact that they're spending a lot of time doing something that they don't really like. It just makes them a lot of money or a lot of fame. And it decays them internally. But when you're doing something that not only fills up your heart and your soul, but you're doing other things to help others, a servant mentality, so to speak. Oh, yes, I'm getting paid, I get that. But I pour all of myself into somebody else's dreams and helping them get to that place. When you're giving back to people's life, and you can make a life while doing that, I think that's success.
I want you to say that again. The very first thing you said was something about, you said it's about moving others. What did you say? That was really clever. I like that.
Yeah, to me, it's about being able to do something that you're so passionate about that when it moves you, it helps you move others.
Okay, that's very good. That's deep too, man. That's really good.
I try to be something different than a golf teacher. Like when people come get a golf lesson from me, I don't want them to feel like they got a golf lesson. I want them to feel like it was a different experience than they ever expected. And that matters to me. So I try to come at life holistically, because at the end of the day, what we all struggle with in golf, business, are the same things that we struggle with in our marriage and the same thing we struggle with in our life. And it's learning how to handle the difficult times with the right processes and systems, because we're gonna have bad days and we're gonna have good days, but to try to keep the mental equilibrium so that our processes stay the same, so that we don't get too swayed by our success or too brought down by our failures.
That's really good. With that as a definition, do you consider yourself to be successful?
Yes, by my definition, because I love golf. I love what golf brings to my life and others. And I love to have some teenage boy or girl come to me, whether it's because right now I have a lot of people who have not come to see me until the last ditch effort for whatever reason. And I pull them off the edge of the cliff. So recently, there's this girl that goes to school, and not even at Ensworth, and because I teach kids from all over, and she basically was ready to quit the game. And she was 2 years ago. She was one of the best players in the state, and she was literally almost couldn't even hit the golf ball. And in 11 months, I took her from not being able to break 100 after she was one of the best players, and she finished third in the state championship recently. And to know that some girl thought her golf dream was over, and they came to see me, and 10 months later, she finishes third in the state. She's going to play college golf pretty much wherever she wants to. It's a beautiful thing for me, because when I saw her come off the golf course at the state championship, the smile and the look in her eyes of her knowing that she could do it, because I didn't hit a shot for her. I just helped her believe and helped her learn how to access what she already knew. And she thought that was gone. And the fact that I'm able to help her realize that it wasn't gone, she just forgot how to access it, it's the greatest gift of them all. There's no plaque that says I'm teacher of anything that matters more than looks like that, and the hugs that you get when you see somebody's dream that feels like it's flowing right through their fingertips, and all of a sudden it's right back in their hands again.
Man, I can see in your eyes, I can see your eyes glistening just a little more than they were a minute ago. So this is very emotional for you.
It is. And I've had so many moments where people came to see me, like, if you can't fix me today, I quit.
Wow.
And that matters to me, because I really know when they're that good, this has very little to do with physical. Something has happened trauma-wise in the mind that it doesn't allow them to access what they already know.
So what happened to that girl? Like, she was really, really good and then couldn't break 100, and you brought her back. What went on in the middle? Was it a mental block that she was having?
Well, I would say this. There are certain people that are really good at developing kids to play golf from the beginning to a certain area. And then there's a next group of teachers that are really good at taking that handoff and getting them right up to the ability to be an elite player. But if somebody doesn't understand like human limitations of what somebody can and can't do, and they try to put a square peg into a round hole, and that person believes that this is the only way to play. Basically, she changed her golf swing to a model, not what her body can do, but what somebody else's body could do. And they went chasing Pandora's box, when in all actuality, she just didn't know what she had. So when she sacrificed her golf integrity to try to chase somebody else's blueprint, it went right through her fingertips. So that's really the key for me, is to be able to figure out how to get back underneath the hood, rewire it up a little bit, and help them remember who they are.
There's so many, I think a lot of what you've talked about today, I think there's so many parallels with the entrepreneurial journey, which is why I think this is such a cool conversation, is because you're not the traditional entrepreneur that I have sit on the show doing this. But I think what you said just then, and then what you said earlier about speed, like the speed is the number one indicator of success in sports. I think speed has a lot to do with your ability to succeed in entrepreneurship as well. Like getting there faster than everybody else, doing it quickly, converting, and acting at a certain speed and velocity that outperforms everybody else. That would make you successful. But then you're talking about there are certain people who can teach golf up to a certain level, but they don't have the ability to go beyond that. That doesn't mean they're a lot valuable, because they were really valuable in those early stages. A lot of entrepreneurs need to understand that too. Is like, listen, you might grow a company from 0 to a couple million or 10 million, but you might and probably aren't the person to take that from 10 to 50 or 50 to 100. And in entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people get burned out on the experience of entrepreneurship and want to leave their businesses because they, like that girl, like they've lost the passion, they've lost the drive. They tried to fit a model rather than doing it their own way. I think there's a lot of parallels with what you're doing.
100%. And I think that what you said there, the efficiency speed of chasing your dream in the entrepreneur world is the actual key to success, and learning how to be shrewd enough to know what's important and what's not important in the chase is critical. And I would say, of all the things that I get criticized plenty when I make that statement, because when I say it, apparently makes them feel like I'm saying I'm better than they are. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you're amazing at your role. You should be just as prideful that you're taking a 9-year-old boy or girl and introduce them to the game and make them love the game, because without you, there is no me. But also, without me, there is no you. I'm not more important than you. We fill different roles.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan wasn't winning championships until they were Scottie Pippen. And they weren't dominant until they had Dennis Rodman and Horace Grant and all the parts. So everybody wants to talk about Michael Jordan. But remember, Michael Jordan didn't win any championships until they were Scottie Pippen. So you got to know your role. And much like you said, in this world, some people are really good at getting things started to the $10 million mark. But to scale it up tenfold from there, I would imagine that is exactly the same as and it draws parallels to any other thing in the world. You just have to be gifted in that area and know what it takes to make that 10x jump. And some people are wired for it and some people aren't. That doesn't make you a failure. It just means you got to know who you are.
I think that, when I talk on the show with people like you, I ask questions about the keys to success, and it starts with this idea of passion. You've already mentioned, as a matter of fact, you used the word passion when I asked you to define success. You said when you're doing something that moves you and that moves others, and you got to be passionate about it. I agree, but I also know that passion has two sides to it. There's a side of passion that is emotional, that's the love of it. Like you have a love of golf, and there's certainly passion in your eyes and passion in your gut about golf as a game. You love it. But the thing that really makes people successful is the willingness to endure. That's actually what the word passion means. It means willing to endure. The etymology, if you go back and look at the root, it means willing to endure, which is why the Passion of the Christ is called the Passion of the Christ. It's not because he was excited to go to the cross, it was because he was willing to endure for a greater cause. So in your story of success and the golfers that you've trained and taught to be successful, do you find that also to be one of the keys to success, is that they were passionate in the sense, not only did they love the game, but they were willing to endure through the hard times to be successful?
Yes, because there are many kids out there that believe that LeBron and Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and Roger Federer and Sampras and Nadal, it was a straight shot to success. Never anything that they had to work through. But the ability to have perseverance and grit is absolutely essential, because the rise to the top looks more like this than it does that. And most people don't recognize the value of struggle and the value of loss, because if we don't really win or lose, you either win or you learn. And most of the time your great growths occur from pouring everything you have into this great event, giving it all you have and leaving it all out on the floor, course, court, whatever, and lose. And those people that can pick themselves up off the floor after leaving it all out there and the devastation of losing, those are the people you don't want to mess with, that can get back up off the floor and be ready to fight again tomorrow, because they know what it takes. They might not have won that battle, but they're ready for the war. And that's what it takes.
I've always said that failure is a much better teacher than success. If all you do is win, 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 you really aren't. Well, what have you done? I mean, you just had a natural gift that you pushed through, but it's not until you fail you're, okay, now I know I got to change this. And so, for example, that girl that you were mentioning earlier who went through that slump and now is going on to go play in whatever college she wants, that will probably have more effect on her future life as a golfer and her success in the future than if she had continued to be really good through all that. You agree?
Well, 100%. And more than anything, I tell all these kids, I've had 198 players get a golf scholarship. One of them played on TV. That's Brandt Snedeker, right? What are the 197 others doing? They're using golf to create business. So the worst possible outcome of being working really hard to be a good golfer is you get to use the game to create business. And why is that so important? What in life is left that you get to spend 5 hours with somebody in something that you love to do in a beautiful setting for 5 straight hours? Hardly anything. That's why golf has never gone away, is because where do you get 5 hours outdoor having fun and competing in a free interview? You get a free interview every time. What's this guy like? Does he cheat? Does he drop a ball down? Is he super integrity? Does he always count them all? Is he always thinking about you first? Is he worried about how you're enjoying it? Or is he all into himself? You're getting a free interview process of who you're getting ready to bring into your life in a game. And it will almost always, the patterns stay the same, whether they're in the golf course, in the office, or at home. It's pretty interesting.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, I know a lot of people do a lot of business on the golf course. I'm not that guy. I was joking earlier, I play like once a year in a chamber tournament, but it's always fun. But I know a lot of people who do a lot of business on the golf course, but I've never heard them explain it the way you just did. But that makes perfect sense, is that you can see a lot about who a person is by the way they handle themselves through 5 hours of golf and 18 holes out in the sunshine,
Yeah, and you got a chance to watch a couple of things. So there are a lot of people that are really smart, right? So they know that they can't show this weakness. But when you're watching somebody's body language and you're watching somebody's facial expressions all day long, you know what's authentic and what's not. You know what's being forced and what's being acted and what's not. And that's what I'm always paying attention to, is authentically, who are you? It's easy to see when you're acting, but it's not. You can't hide authenticity. It's right in front of your face.
Yeah. So passion is like that first key that I find is this key to success. The second key is being in the right place at the right time. What do you know about that in your journey to success?
100% correct on that. And I think that Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book on this particular piece as well. And I think it's important to note this. I graduated college 1 month after Tiger won the Masters in 1997. So what did he do? He was a golf prodigy from age 3. So literally everybody's family got their kids involved in golf because of Tiger Woods. And I show up in a junior golf mecca in Franklin, Tennessee, with hundreds of kids wanting to be the next Tiger Woods. 1 month later. 1 year after that, there were no jobs available for what I was doing because they were already taken. So the timing of it was essential. I graduated at the perfect time, at the perfect place, to be in the perfect spot that I am today.
Wow.
So there's no doubt about it. Timing plays a huge role in it.
What about knowing the right people, which is the third key to success, and knowing the right people? Who are the right people in your life that helped you get successful?
Well, I think it starts with my dad and my mom. My dad spent a lot of time with me, and my dad was like, he kept on instilling, you're going to be great. You got this. You can do. So he built my confidence up hugely. And then my first mentor in golf was possibly the greatest PGA professional of all time, Bill Strasbaugh. Bill Strasbaugh is the only person to have ever won all 4 major awards in the PGA. So the 5th award is called the Bill Strasbaugh Award. That was my mentor.
Wow.
So that was huge. So right before he passed away, he turned me over to one of the greatest teachers in the world, Jim McLean. Jim McLean helped create like a vision in my head of how I package my lessons and the sequential order in which I help people get to the top. And I think he's the greatest of all time at doing that. So between those people and then other business people that believed in me, the podcast was like, Virgil, I love your interviews on golf, but you asked too good of questions to just ask golf questions. So he wrote me a check. He said, whatever you need to have your own studio, the only thing is I'm not giving you this unless you name the podcast on the Verge. So that's how it started. So a friend of mine who listened to my radio show for 17 straight years said, I'm going to pay for everything to get you started. I don't want to hear about golf. I want to hear about what it takes to be great. And yes, you can have golfers on, but I don't want it to be about golf, and it has to be called On the Verge. And that's awesome. And I did that on the golf course. He goes, I got something I want to talk to you about. I had no idea what it was going to be, but 18 holes of golf, Nashville Golf and Athletic Club, and there you are.
How long ago was that?
It's almost 3 years ago.
Man, that's great.
Yeah, it's a great story.
I'm looking forward to seeing the studio.
It's really, it's pretty simple, You don't have to have much now.
Yeah.
Got a computer, I got really cool headsets, and 2 comfortable chairs and some things that make everything all work together. And we just sit down and just like this, talk it out.
Yeah.
Except that she'll be on the other foot next time.
I know. Well, I'm always excited to be on other people's shows too. It's a lot of fun.
It really is.
It is a lot of fun to meet people, to interview people, and to be interviewed. It's just it's such podcasting is such an interesting way that people get to explore deeper ideas and concepts. And I wanted to do this podcast for years and kept putting it off, and finally I hired a coach. Class about a year ago. And we talked about all the things I wanted to accomplish and this concept that I had in my mind. He's like, well, all right, it's time to get a podcast going. Yeah, good. I've been wanting to do this for years. Let's go. So that's kind of the way my coach helped push me into that as well.
Trust the parachute. Jump. Gotta trust it, man.
So we got passion. We've talked about being in the right place, right time. We talked about knowing the right people. What about preparation? Now, preparation to me is the 4th key to success, and it's the hardest one. Because in order to be successful in anything, you've got to be prepared for it. You have to have the know-how to accomplish it. And you mentioned Malcolm Gladwell a moment ago, and he wrote that book, Outliers, where it talks about 10,000 hours of practice, right? And that's what gets you. And that is the preparation point. And so for you, what was the preparation? What was the know-how to get you to be so successful at golf?
Well, God gave me a lot of ability to play the game well. Maybe not well enough, but in the search of why I didn't make it at the highest level, it became clear to me that it wasn't my physical gifts or lack thereof that prevented me from doing it. It was how I could control my mind and my emotions through failing. I couldn't cope with failing. And if you can't cope with failing in life, but certainly in golf, you don't have a chance. So understanding my weaknesses gave me a deep dive into understanding the mind. And as soon as I understood the mind, then I understood how to guide people from point A to point Z. So the preparation came from having the game, not being able to make it, going in the search of why I didn't make it. And then I deep down inside believe I'm a coach. I'm wired to help people. So I came up with a vision in my mind. And it was truly, I just sat down over maybe a month's time and visualized what I thought it took to go from how do I hold this thing to how do I hold this thing.
So for those of you who didn't see that on YouTube, he the first how do I hold this thing, he was holding the golf club. Then the next one he was holding an award.
That's right.
That was good. That's really good. That's very, very good. I like that. So so you got passion, you got being in the right place, right time, knowing the right people, you got preparation. And your preparation, you talked about how that you thought it was going to lead you to play, but it actually you lead to coach. Let me ask you, this is kind of off out of the 5 things, but what would you say to the concept, like a lot of people say, those who can do and those who can't teach? Like that's a pretty common cliche, and I was a teacher for years, and I heard that sometimes jokingly, but sometimes a little pointedly. What would you say about that? I mean, you're not playing the golf in the tournaments, but you're teaching the guys to do it in the tournaments, and they're winning those awards. What would you say to that?
I think there is some truth in that. There are people that are so ridiculously gifted mentally that they don't ever need to know how they do something. They just trust. Now, yes, they've worked really hard to get to that place, but there are some people that are so naturally gifted that they've never questioned, how does my golf swing look? How does my jump shot look? Is my elbow in right? All those things, they never think about that. But when you start to have your first dose of adversity, a lot of people try to shift back toward how do I perfect this model? And perfection is a cancerous lie of chasing something that's not possible. Instead of understanding who you are, understand what makes you tick and your strengths, you try to become perfect. And in the search of perfect, we end up usually in the doom of never being able to achieve it. And of course we can't achieve it, we're humans. But yet we are enticed, nearly addicted to perfection.
Yeah. I think, and I think I appreciate your response there, because I think you're right. When people say those who can do and those who can't teach, I also believe that teaching and coaching, like you're teaching and coaching, and of course I have my business. One of my businesses, I coach business owners, and I think that God has created within some people just this natural ability to coach and to teach in a way that other people can't. They may or may not be able to go out and perform the same way that their students or clients, but without that teacher, they wouldn't be able to perform at that higher of a level. And so I think that like my superpower is teaching. Like I feel like that Father God created me to be a teacher. And I didn't really realize that until after I left the classroom. Yeah. And I was a school teacher for 4 years, taught 8th grade American history. And then I became an accidental entrepreneur. And it wasn't until probably 6 or 7 years in that journey that I realized, oh wow, I'm actually supposed to be a teacher, but how do I use that? So I really do appreciate your perspective and the fact that you've coached so many people, 198 people to earn scholarships, and you've coached people who've won tours, and like without you, would they have been able to do it? No, I think coaches and teachers are absolutely essential to that.
I think that it's important for people to understand that every person on this planet's been given a gift from God. The lucky ones figure it out. Mm-hmm. What is that gift? And I was able to look myself in the mirror and believe in my heart that I wasn't good enough to play on TV. And that was a really hard day for me because I wanted to. But what I really learned was that I'm naturally a giver, a coach, and I get more out of helping others than I did selfishly chasing a dream of my own. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably where you got it, right? It's like, it's really cool to be successful, but man, it is way cooler to help somebody else be successful.
Yeah.
It's such a great feeling.
Yeah, well, I know that, I mean, in my story was that I created a multi-million-dollar company in an industry I didn't know anything about, and I was able to succeed in spite of those things through the keys that I've asked you about, passion and place and people and preparation, and I was able to do all those things. But at the end of the day, I knew that wasn't what God created me to do. Like I could run a successful company, and we could have great employees, great team members, everything's fantastic. But really what I'm here for is to help other people do that, and other people to get to that place where they can live a life, the ideal life that they truly want. So that's what I'm embracing. Yeah. So I appreciate your perspective on that. The fifth key to success that I write about and we talk about on this show is plan, which really refers to the financial ability to deploy the financial resources required to be successful. Your story's a little different because you don't have a traditional business that you're running, you're coaching other people. So this may not have as much to do with your story to success as a traditional entrepreneur. But how do you see plan as a key to succeeding?
Well, you have to, the first step of becoming anything is to take action, right? So before you're going to take action with a plan,
yeah,
right? So you have to you can't just blindly start something. So I was going to be a golf teacher. Well, what was going to be my niche? Greatness. What does it take to be great? Speed, power, balance, mechanical excellence, mental excellence, management excellence. Deep dive, create a game plan that you take all the complexities, make it so it's simple and digestible for the layperson to understand, and then from there, put your plan into action every day, not necessarily the same way, but within the framework of the plan. Some people are starting at different places, but all the plan is set up so that you can start here, here, or here, but you can still end up there. And you have to have malleability and flexibility within the plan, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Certainly for my world. There's no such thing as start here and here. And I think that I would have to believe that vast majority of business is still the same, is that there's no absolute guaranteed start point to get to the end point. Some people are just in different places.
We haven't talked about your love and affinity for wine and your knowledge of wine. So I want to kind of do that before we close the show out. So what is it about wine? Like where did that come from? Because that doesn't seem to naturally connect. Because I don't think I've ever seen anybody drinking wine on the golf course.
Well, that's a great story, right? So Mississippi State University in 1996 was one of only 3 schools in the country that had wine appreciation. Now I'm going to be fully honest. I did not take it for the appreciation of wine. I took it for the free buzz, right? But the teacher, the professor of the class, is a top 100 wine taster and a top 100 chef. So I didn't know this. So here I am, I'm a 21-year-old kid, and I'm going there to drink wine. And he says, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to study each region of the world. I'm going to cook the food for that country or that area of the world. And we're going to understand why the food matches the wine and why the wine enhances the food. So next week, we're going to study Italy. So he made all this Italian food, and we had all the whites and the reds, about, a shot of each one. So I have like 13 glasses in front of us with all these different foods. And the first class, that was the greatest class I ever took. I learned more about culture and the understanding of how wine impacts food, how the food impacts wine, and when those two elements are together, it impacts the human-human connection. And I was like, I found another way to impact people's lives through art. Wine is art. And to me, I fell in love with chasing the understanding of why does this chateau or vineyard make better wine than this? And what goes into that? And why does Italian wine almost always have to be consumed with food versus Napa Valley doesn't, but yet it's the exact same grape? And it's because of the acidity. The acidity in Italian wine is designed to help cut through the fats in the sauces and the pastas so that it breaks down in your mouth and you get greater flavor out of it. But drinking Italian wine just to sit around and drink an Italian wine is a little acidic. So it's fascinating for me to understand each particular nuance. And then each wine has its own characteristics. Like Cabernet Sauvignon is bold, powerful. So when I public speak on these things, I will use golfers' references. Like, this is more like Rory McIlroy, sleek and fast and powerful. Or this one is a little more like Bubba Watson, a little fruity, a little out there, a little different. When you can start to create pictures in people's minds, so it's less stuffy. Golf and wine can be a little stuffy, a little intimidating because it sounds very buttoned up. But in all actuality, I'm trying to unbutton it a little bit and help people understand that the commonalities that are occurring in the characteristics of your favorite golfer or whatever are the exact same things that you look at when you like your favorite wines.
So what do you do with wine? Are you just speaking on wine? Do you have a show about wine? What do you do with wine?
I would love to do it, but here's my favorite thing I've done. So during the Ryder Cup, which was recently, it's when the United States plays Europe in a team event. So what I'll do is I'll take 6 wines of the same grapes, one from America and one from Europe, and we brown bag them in a blind tasting. So we're drinking a Chardonnay and a Chardonnay. Nobody knows who it is, but this side over here is Team A and this is Team B, and I have a match play championship. So they'll drink and there'll be 13 guys, like 7 guys say that A wins and 6 guys say that B wins. So the winner of that match, A. So A is America and B is Europe. So after we've tasted all the wines, we found out who won the Wine Ryder Cup. And that blows people. Everybody thinks that the French are going to win every time because of the prestige of the French wines. But I know enough about wine that I know how I can find a close to French style Chardonnay in America and match it with a less Frenchy Chardonnay out of Burgundy, right? And then they don't really know what they're drinking, because there's a lot of people think they know what they're drinking, but they don't know what they're drinking. And they would bet the world that the Europeans were going to win, and America's won every time.
Really?
It's hilarious. But once again, it's all about entertainment. It's all about human connection. So when I'm doing this, it's about, people think that they're only going to come here and talk about golf. When I'm going to go way over their head, I'm not even going to talk about golf, other than I might compare it to Tiger Woods or Justin Thomas or Jordan Spieth. But I'm going to make them think about what they actually think they know and turn into something that they really know.
So what's your favorite wine? Or is that a loaded question?
It's a really loaded question, because it's a lot of the time it depends on what the environment is.
Yeah, that was going to be.
Because if I'm out with if I'm sitting up on a rooftop over at the Thompson Hotel, right, I might just have a big Napa Valley Cabernet. But if I'm going to go to have a big steak, I'm going to want a Bordeaux. But if I'm going to go eat a really big Italian meal, I'm going to want a Barolo or a Barbaresco or a Brunello. So it's more about time and place for me than it is like my favorite, because I like about 200 wines.
Wow. So do you have a cellar that you kind of keep your own stuff in?
Yes, I do. So I have 2 2 refrigerator, cellars. I don't have like a cave, so to speak, but I have a nice collection of my favorites, and I don't delve too deep into that occasion. That's for special occasions, but I have a nice collection.
Have you been to the wine cellar here at the Standard?
No, but I'm looking forward to taking a little
well,
trip.
when we finish up, I'll walk you down there and show it to you. It's pretty cool. I'm not much of a wine drinker. I'm learning. Mm-hmm. Like I don't drink beer. I've tried. I just do not like it. I have, but a lot of I'm more of a brown water drinker. I like whiskeys and rums and that type of thing.
It's easy to see why guidance is a good one, because my goodness, this is spectacular.
It is very good. But I have been learning to drink some wines, and so I've got a good friend of mine, one of my best friends. He and his wife are very into wine, and they understand it a lot better than I do. And so when I go over their home, they're like, okay, we got to try this one. And occasionally, like, okay, this is good. But I have not learned that pairing thing that you're talking about. I've heard people talk about that. I just haven't figured that out yet. It doesn't compute.
Well, then once again, that to you is interesting. For me, it became a passion.
Yeah.
So I went all in. For you, you're kind of like, you're not in that place yet. You're interested. You're not passionate about it. But if it's going to happen to you, it'll be because you're with somebody who really knows what they're doing, and miraculously, you were vulnerable at that moment to get hit with the story, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Well, I've got one final question for you, just kind of a loaded question, and this is completely off. This is on your opinion, not what you think other people think. Who is the #1 golfer of all time?
I don't think that there's any doubt that it's Tiger Woods. Now, Jack Nicklaus has records that are staggering. Like, not only did he win 18 majors versus Tiger's 15 majors, but he's finished second 19 times, and he's finished third 18 times. So essentially, he's finished in the top 3 of 55 major championships. There isn't anybody close to that. But Jack Nicklaus really only had to beat about 11 guys, 15 at the most, that truly could challenge him. Tiger Woods basically prevented Ernie Els, Vijay Singh, David Duval, and Phil Mickelson from ever being recognized as legendary, because they all played in the same era as Tiger, and Tiger pounded them unmercifully for decades. Nobody ever drove the golf ball like Tiger when Tiger was Tiger. He's widely considered, and irrefutably, statistically speaking, the greatest iron player of all time. He has the craziest stat I've ever heard in my life, which is he was so much better at his short game. So that's like the chip shot and a putt. That's called an up and down. And his up and down percentage 3 different times was greater. His was higher than the #2 guy on the PGA Tour. That difference between 1 and 2 was greater than #2 to dead last. So people want to know who the greatest was? It isn't even really close. Tiger Woods was the greatest from the driver to the putter for almost 11 years. And Jack Nicklaus was very, very good, but I even think Jack knows that Tiger's the GOAT.
Well, that's good. That's a good way to finish up the show. And I'll say again that this Elevated, the book with Virgil Herring and Drew Maddux. If you will DM me if you want a copy of this signed copy of this book. I've got one to give away. The first person to DM me on Instagram that says that they want the book, we'll mail it out. But Virgil, this has been an honor to talk to you. I'm looking forward to being on your show not too far in the future. But thank you for coming today. This has been great.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Well, there you have it. We've talked a little bit different today about the idea of success from a pro golf coach and trainer today, about his views of success. But I think there were lots of parallels here in his story today about what he's been able to accomplish in the golf world and how those parallel with the entrepreneur and the business world. And I think that for those of you that are really paying attention, you do see, we talked about the speed. That's a parallel. Understanding your limitations, like the great philosopher Clint Eastwood said in the movie, a man's got to know his limitations. You've got to know where your limits are so that you can bring your other teammates in and other partners in to make sure that you can get to that next level in entrepreneurship. So make sure you're keying into these things as we listen to this show and listen to these great guests like Virgil. I also want to talk to you just real briefly in closing today about my Exit Accelerator group coaching cohort. If you want to really live the true ideal life as an entrepreneur, it requires you to get out of the weeds. You got to get out of the daily operations. You're never going to be able to learn to live in that successful place you want to be in if you're doing everything all the time as the owner, as the operator. You've got to get out of the weeds. And that's what I do in my Exit Accelerator group coaching cohort is I take people just like you. I take 12 entrepreneurs at a time through a 12-week course where I show you the 4 keys, the 4 steps of getting out of the weeds so that you can live that ideal life as soon as possible. It doesn't require you to sell your business. One of the businesses that I started that became a multi-million-dollar company, I was able to exit that company without exiting, still own it, still get the tax benefits, still get the financial benefits, without having to sell it to another company, without selling it to someone else. That's called exit without exiting. And that's what this Exit Accelerator group coaching cohort will do for you. And if you're interested in doing that, just go to exitwithoutexiting.com, sign up for the next cohort. I've got one that starts really soon. We meet on Thursdays for 1 hour over 12 weeks. We meet 8 times, and I would love to have you to be a part of my next cohort. Make sure you tune in again next week on our show when we talk to another super successful person about how they became successful. We'll see how these 5 keys of passion and place and people and preparation and plan, how they play into that person's success. So thank you for being here today. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we invite you to visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Take charge of your business. Grow it from great to incredible. Join us again next time here on The Root of All Success.